Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything that there is. Janmadhyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsurayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha dhamna swena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation made of the threefold gunas appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion, maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसम् आलयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from the mouth of Shuka Brahmarshi. Go on drinking this nectar again and again. So, we are now in the seventh chapter of the first skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the narration of Suta Maharshi in Naimisharanyam to the congregation of rishis headed by Shaunaka about the origin story of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, we saw the instructions of Narada, the beautiful instructions on the glory of devotion, as well as an account of his past life, thus emphasizing the greatness of simply listening to the stories of the pastimes of the Supreme Being in his avatars, incarnations, and therefore he advises Vyasa to write Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of all the pastimes of various avatars as well as the devotees, the Bhagavatas and the Jnanis. Now we enter the seventh chapter. So Shaunaka now asks the oldest and the head of the rishis who are listening in Naimisharanyam, he asks Suta Maharshi, so what happened after Narada left? Because we saw that Narada left singing his uh, song and playing his veena. And so now Shaunaka is asking, after he left, what did Vyasa do? What was in his mind and what did he next do? So now again Suta Maharshi continues. He says there is an ashram on the western bank of the Saraswati river. We already saw that Vyasa was sitting alone by the banks of Saraswati river when Narada came to give him a visit. So now Suta Maharshi says that there is an ashram called Shamyaprasa, which is on the western bank of Saraswati river. So presumably near where Vyasa was sitting alone. So he goes to that ashram, which is his own ashram, and he sips a little water, collects his mind, and sits in meditation. He completely abides in his being, fully withdrawing his senses, withdrawing all other outer activities and inner movements of thought, and goes into the silence of being. And there he is able to have a direct vision of the truth of the Supreme Being as well as his Maya. He says, Suta Maharshi says, Vyasa was able to perceive the primal person as well as the Maya, which depends on its very existence, which depends for its very existence on him. So, this Maya, which is the illusory energy of the Supreme Being, is what creates, sustains, and also dissolves this universe. And not only that, this very Maya gives the illusion of individual identification for the beings within creation. So everyone is afflicted by this sense of ego, the sense of separate identity, which is an act of Maya by which the individual being is, or rather, the individual ego is superimposed on the pure being that is expanding as Maya. And because of this, he identifies with the three gunas. So it is the three gunas we saw even in the very first verse, sattva, rajas, and tamas, which form this manifold universe. And the being, the jiva, as it is called, the being identifies wrongly with these gunas and the activities of the gunas, which is to say, the body as well as the mind, as his own self, rather than recognizing that his true self is pure consciousness, which is unaffected by the three gunas and their activities, which are the body and the mind. So, the Supreme Being, when through the power of Maya projects this universe through the three gunas, in that projection, there is a lot of living entities who are also created and who are a spark of the same Supreme Being, and yet they are wrongly identified with the activities of the body and the mind as their self, rather than the true self, which is non different from the Supreme Being. So, all of this Vedavyasa saw very clearly in his vision again. And not only that, he also saw that practice of devotion is the direct means of counteracting this ignorance. So, with this clarity, he was able to now, just like that, compose the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So, all he needed was the instruction of his teacher, who is Devarishi Narada, who gave this clear instruction, and then he was able to compose himself, sit in silence, withdraw himself, and he was, because of his pure mind and his great clarity within, he was able to immediately perceive the entire Bhagavatam in his mind's eye, and he put it to writing, as it were, and that's how Srimad Bhagavatam was created. So here it says that the we mentioned that the devotion to the Lord is the direct means of counteracting the ignorance. Here, the word used for the Lord is again a beautiful name called Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja means one who is beyond sense perceptions. So, the one supreme being who is beyond sense perceptions, Adhokshaja, being fully devoted to Him, surrendered to Him as the only truth there is the surest and easiest way to be free of the ignorance of the individual ego. So, recognizing this, Vedavyasa composes this entire Srimad Bhagavatam in this ashram on the banks of the Saraswati River. And this Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for all common people. It is not meant for, he says here that it is not specifically meant for pandits or scholars and so on. It is meant because these are beautiful stories that can be relatable for anyone. Therefore, it is for common people. And as anyone listens to this work, devotion to Krishna, the Supreme Being, wells up in their heart, devotion that removes grief, uh, illusion or delusion, and fear. So, this verse is beautiful. Again, we can look at this verse. Yasyam vai shruyamanayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsah shoka moha bhayapaha. So, yasyam vai shruyamanayam, just by simply listening to it, Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpadyate, in the Supreme Being Krishna, bhakti or devotion wells up, and shoka moha bhayapaha, that is, grief, delusion, and fear are instantly dispelled. So that's the greatness of Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, another verse that glorifies the greatness of Bhagavatam right after it is composed by Vyasa. And then, having produced this great Bhagavata Samhita, the sage Vyasa taught it to his son Shuka, who loved to live in solitude. So, we saw three things mentioned by Suta Maharshi about how Bhagavatam came about. He said Vyasa composed it, he taught it to Shuka Brahmarshi, who is his own son, and Shuka Brahmarshi in turn narrated it entirely to King Parikshit on the banks of Ganga, who was fasting with a vow to, uh, or rather with a vow to fast unto death. He was sitting by the Ganga. So all of these aspects are now being covered by Suta Maharshi. First, he has described in a detailed way how Vyasa came to compose Bhagavatam, and he has also now mentioned that Vyasa taught it to Shuka Brahmarshi. Now, immediately, Shaunaka has a question. He already uh, indicated this question earlier, and now he is again asking it explicitly. He is asking, the sage Shuka is a lover of solitude. He is a lover of quietness, silence. He has all the qualities of a great jnani who always abides in silence, who is not engaged in any discussions and so on. So, this being the case, how did Shuka bother with mastering this voluminous work? This is his question. Because this work is a voluminous work, besides 18,000 verses. It has all the avatars, and we will go through it. It's beautiful, and it is such detailed accounts. But the question for Shaunaka is, why would Shuka Brahmarishi, who is always in silence, bother with such a large work? He says the word he uses is nivritti nirataha. Nivritti is one who is completely free of any movement of thought. Vritti is thought, so nivritti means one who is free of any movement of thought, who is always in silence. Why would this Shuka Brahmarishi bother with this work? So Suta Maharishi replies to this and says, even sages who delight in the self alone, in their own self, in the pure being, and whose knot of ignorance is completely cut off. In other words, they do not have any false identification with the body, with the mind. They do not have any notion of a separate individual self. They have realized their truth as the pure being, which is Vasudeva, which is the only truth there is. Even they, he says, practice disinterested devotion to, or the more correct word is motiveless devotion to Sri Hari, because they have no interest or they have no motive to gain through devotion. So we saw earlier that the motive for common people is to be free of grief, delusion, and fear, because reading Bhagavatam removes ignorance and thereby removes grief, delusion, and fear. But for someone who is already free of the false identification of the ego, there is nothing to be accomplished. They are already free of grief, delusion, and fear. And yet, They are interested in this because it is so sweet. And that is why it says it's motiveless devotion. This verse is also very beautiful. It says, Atma Ramascha Munayo Nirgrantha Api Urukrame Kurvanti Ahetukim Bhaktim Ittam Bhuta Guno Harihi. He says, Atma Rama, one who is revels in his own self, this great sage. And Nirgrantha means one who is free of the knot of ego. They also abide in motiveless devotion, a haitukim bhaktim. It's such a beautiful word that comes in many places. Hetu means cause, and a haituki means without any cause. There is no cause, no reason, no motive for this devotion. A hetukim bhaktim in Hari. So this verse explains that even great sages who have nothing to accomplish are always engaged in this costless, motiveless devotion to the Supreme Being. And that is why he says, Shuka Brahmarshi, who is all the more so because he is the son of Vyasa and is beloved of Krishna himself, studied this great work of Bhagavatam every day when he was still with his father. So he says Nityam. So this word Nityam we also saw in the beginning itself. There is a verse that is worth repeating. It says Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By reading daily Bhagavatam, all inauspiciousness is removed, is what that verse said. So, for one who is still caught in the net of Maya, reading Bhagavatam daily alone is enough, is what was already said. And now, here he says that even for one who is completely free of this Maya, he also reads Bhagavatam daily, Nityam, because of the sweetness of this work. So, with this, Suta Maharshi concludes the Shuka Brahmarshi side of things, because now we have explained how Vyasa composed it and how he taught it to Shuka Brahmarshi, why he learned it, and why he took it to his heart, this great voluminous work. Now Suta Maharshi shifts his focus to Parikshit, because that's the other important uh, person in this narration. The speaker is Shuka Brahmarshi and the listener is Parikshit, who is the grandson of Arjuna. So now Suta Maharshi says, I shall now tell you the story of the birth and the exploits and the uh, liberation finally of the royal sage Parikshit, as also the ascension of Pandavas to heaven, because all of these are a prelude to bringing out the story of Krishna. So he says that this entire Bhagavatam is bringing out the story of Krishna, and a prelude to that, in order for the story to be brought out, first we need to know why Parikshit went to the banks of Ganga sitting in a fast unto death. So he says, for that reason, let me tell you briefly how this came about that Parikshit went to the banks of Ganga. So he says, after the Mahabharata war, which is this great war that happened between Kauravas and Pandavas, where millions of people were killed and they had all fallen like heroes, and Duryodhana was finally defeated in the battlefield by Bhima. His thighs were broken. He was still not dead, but his thighs were broken. And there are beautiful descriptions of every single episode in Mahabharata, again by Vyasa, and how this whole war was beautifully orchestrated by Krishna again. So Duryodhana was defeated and lying in the battlefield with his legs broken and slowly losing his life. And at that time, Ashwatthama, who is the son of Drona, so Drona is the uh, teacher of the Pandavas and Arjuna in particular, because he was a great master of archery. And Arjuna, being the great archer, he learned his archery from Drona. But as circumstance would have it, Drona had to fight alongside Duryodhana, And this is part of the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is bewildered to fight against his own teacher and his cousins and his uncles and grandfather and so on. And that's when Krishna gives the great advice of Gita, that you have to do your duty when you have to do it. And then there is the whole discourse of Bhagavad Gita. But in any case, Drona therefore fought on the other side and died. And his son Ashwatthama, who was still alive, one of the very few people to be alive, was still very loyal to Duryodhana, and therefore he thought he should take revenge. And he came to the camp of the Pandavas. So the war has just gotten over. They are still in the camps. We can imagine this huge battlefield that is now completely filled with corpses. It's a very gory scene. People have died on all sides, millions of people, and the ones who are surviving are still in the camps, encampments, and they are still figuring things out as to what the next steps are. So the Pandavas, along with Draupadi, their wife, are in the encampment on their side, and their young sons are there. Draupadi has sons who are also sleeping, and this Ashwatthama does a very heinous thing. He comes in the middle of the night when everybody is sleeping, and he kills the sons of Draupadi because he wants to, because all the Kauravas have been finished off, he wants to also finish off all the Pandavas. But Krishna knew this, and therefore he takes away the Pandavas that particular night, but he doesn't do anything with the sun. So this is all part of Krishna's Leela. He, in this avatar, wanted to remove the burden of the earth, and therefore there was so much destruction that happened on all sides. And Krishna very well knew that this would happen, and therefore he only ordained rather that the Pandavas be saved, but all the sons were killed, and there was only one son left, which was actually in the womb of Abhimanyu's wife, who's Parikshit. We'll see that later. But right now, Draupadi's sons were all killed, and in the middle of the night, and he goes to Duryodhana and gives this news, and even Duryodhana is horrified by it. Duryodhana doesn't like it. He thought he would please Duryodhana by this action, but Duryodhana himself is unhappy because it is such a heinous act to come in the middle of the night and kill young boys who are sleeping. So Draupadi is, of course, completely in grief. She is wailing. Her eyes are filled with tears. And when the Pandavas come back, they discover this has happened. And Arjuna, especially, is also very angered to see this happen. And he comforts his wife and he tells Draupadi, "Don't worry, my lady. I will go now and immediately give punishment to this heinous Ashwatthama. I will take his head. I will release arrow from my Gandiva bow and remove his head. I will go right now and bring it to you so that you can put your foot on that head which had caused your sons to be killed." So this is how angry Arjuna was also at having seen all the sons being killed in their sleep, which is very understandably gory and unthinkable. So he leaves now after telling his wife these comforting words, and he goes with Krishna. So Krishna is his charioteer. So he goes in his chariot, and Krishna is his friend and charioteer. In fact, the name given to Arjuna here is Achyuta Mitra. So he is the friend of Achyuta, who is Krishna. Achyuta is a name we have seen many times. It means the one who is immovable or unchanging, which is the nature of the Supreme Being. So Krishna's name is Achyuta because he is the unchanging, unmoving Supreme Being. So, but Krishna has taken the form of his charioteer right now as part of his pastime Leela. So, with Krishna as the charioteer, he goes in his chariot, and the chariot has the beautiful flag of Hanuman. And this is described in Bhagavad Gita too as part of Mahabharata. Hanuman, who is part of the pastime of Ram, signifies strength and valor and power, and therefore Arjun has Hanuman as his flag, and with this flag he pursues Ashwatthama. And Ashwatthama is now already sad because he realized that he did a very wrong thing. Even his master Duryodhana was not happy at his assassination of the young boys, and now he is chased by Arjuna with Krishna as the charioteer. So we can imagine his plight. He is running furiously, he is in his chariot, and he is trying to escape Arjuna, but he is not able to. His horses are tired, and he has nothing to protect him. Then he recognizes that he has one weapon with him, which is called as the Brahmastra. This Brahmastra is the most dangerous weapon, and what is worse is Ashwatthama knows only how to release it, he doesn't know how to withdraw it. The great art of archery is that the great experts are able to launch missiles but also withdraw the missiles when they can, when they choose to do so rather. And Arjuna, for example, was an expert at this, but Ashwatthama was not. He knew only to. So Drona, even though his own son was Ashwatthama, his most dear disciple was Arjuna, and Arjuna learned all the skills from his teacher Drona, which even the teacher's son Ashwatthama did not learn fully. So he knew how to release the missile, but not how to withdraw it. But he still decided that that's his last ditch effort. He has nothing else to protect him, so he launches this missile. But this missile, when he launches, it's not, Arjuna is not clear what has happened, because there is this huge ball of fire that is being released by Ashwatthama, and it looks terrifying. And immediately Arjuna is in that moment full of panic, because this is it's a terrific and terrible looking ball of fire that is coming, and it looks like the end of the world itself. It's such a massive ball of fire. So Arjuna, as always, immediately pleads to Krishna, and it's a beautiful few verses. He says to Krishna, he addresses Krishna, who is his own charioteer, as Krishna Krishna Mahabhaga Bhaktana Abhayankara. He says, Hey Krishna, Hey Krishna. Again, we see how in moments of great joy and great fear, we tend to repeat the name twice, and very excited by either emotion, and that's how Arjuna speaks very naturally. Krishna Krishna Mahabhaga Bhaktanam Abhayankara. He says, Hey Krishna, Hey Krishna, you are the protector and remover of fear of all your devotees, and you are the supreme being. You are the uh, supreme Ishvara, the controller of the whole universe yourself. That again is a beautiful. The next verse he says, "Twamadyah Purushah Sakshad Ishvarah Prakriteh Parah." He says, "You are the original supreme being, uh, Ishvara, or the supreme controller of this universe, and beyond the modes of nature, and you confer all blessings to all beings of this universe. And in this avatar, you have come down to relieve the burden of the earth as well as to serve as an object of devotion. So please tell me what I need to do with this frightful ball of fire that's coming and enveloping on all sides." Now, there is something very in the even in this moment of panic, it's a very beautiful lesson that comes out. In addition to glorifying Krishna as one who removes fear of devotees, as the supreme controller, and as the original being, all of that, he says something very important, which is that your avatar is for two purposes. One is to remove the burden of this earth, and we already saw this is why Mahabharata war was orchestrated by Krishna. Anytime there is too much of burden of evil and unrighteousness in this earth, then the supreme being manifests in some way to remove the burden. But if that is the only purpose, then it can be done through so many ways. There can be a massive natural disaster that can remove vast portions of population. But there is the second and more important reason why Krishna descends, and that is the what he says here, that to serve as an object of meditation and devotion. That's why this verse we have seen a couple of times from the Gita, where Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam, yomam veti tattvataha. One who knows my birth and my activities properly simply gets liberated just by knowing that. So his birth and activities are not for just removing the burden of this earth, which can be easily done without being born and performing activities, but it is especially for all these creating all these pastimes which can still be recounted, and by which men lose interest in worldly events and impermanent things, and there is this interest in simply recounting the exploits of the supreme being and developing a taste for all these. As we saw Narada describe, the very attitude of humans to indulge in stories, if it is simply changed uh, to stories about the pastimes of Bhagavan, then the very tendency becomes something that can help them come out of worldly attachments and suffering. So, in order for that to happen, we need all these wonderful stories and pastimes and various names that come about. And so we still have those beautiful names and all these pastimes, even if the avatar has happened thousands of years ago. So that is the main purpose. And that is why Arjuna says, this is your main purpose, to relieve the burden, but also to be a source of fearlessness and a source of devotion. So please tell me what to do. So, how beautifully Arjuna, even in this moment of panic, that's the difference between Arjuna and someone else, for example, in the Kaurava side, who were very qualified as well, but who were not surrendered to the Supreme Being. So Arjuna is always in this mood of love and devotion to his friend. And this sweet friendship is always something that Arjuna carries with him, and therefore he is always protected. So once he says this, Krishna addresses him and says, Hey Arjuna, nothing to fear. What he has released is the Brahmastra. And you, so he reminds Arjuna, because Arjuna in this moment of panic has forgotten that he also can do the same. So he reminds him and says, You can not only release Brahmastra, but you can withdraw it too. So immediately release the Brahmastra, don't hesitate, and take care of this. So once he is given this advice, Arjuna immediately recognizes that that's the right course of action, and then he goes around the Lord in reverence, it says, and then he fits the Brahmastra to his Gandiva, which is the name of his bow, and he releases it. And as soon as he releases it, there is an even bigger uh, fire in the sky, because the two Brahmastras are colliding, and it creates this terrifying scene. And as soon as it happens, Arjuna now is able to withdraw both, because now both have become one, and he can now withdraw both of them, thereby removing this ball of fire that's enveloping all sides of the sky. And Krishna looks up, it says, with the approval of Krishna, he withdrew them both. After that, Ashwatthama was left with no recourse. So he is now surrendered to Arjuna, and Arjuna gets hold of him and he takes him to his camp, binding him with a rope. He is taking him like an animal, it says. He's tied a rope around Ashwatthama's neck and dragging him like an animal, because he is still enraged at what Ashwatthama did by killing his sons in the middle of the night. So he is taking him like an animal, and as he is doing that, Krishna tests him. Krishna tells him, Arjuna, don't take him anywhere, kill him right here. He says, you should not spare him, kill this fallen Brahmana. So Drona is a Brahmana because so Brahmanas are those who are committed to the scriptures and to learning the scriptures and to living according to Vedic injunctions and not interested in acquiring any other power or any other position, but simply engaging in study and living according to the Vedic scriptures and the Vedic way of living. So, this is the original sense of the word Brahmana. And Ashwatthama is actually not exactly doing that because what he did was not according to that code, and therefore he is what is called a fallen Brahmana. So Krishna says, kill this fallen Brahmana because it is not correct to kill anyone. So this is the code of war that Krishna says, that it is not correct to kill anyone who is either sleeping or who is um, insane, even if someone who's lost his mental balance, or one who has taken surrender, who has fallen at the enemy's feet, and of course who are children and women. These are all people who ought not to be killed, and he killed children who were sleeping. So on two counts he did something which was very wrong. So he says, kill him, otherwise he will repeat the same mistake. And also you gave this word to Draupadi, so you should do that. But this was a test for Arjuna because Krishna did not actually want Ashwatthama to be killed, because Ashwatthama has a boon that he will not be killed ever. And also, he is the son of his own teacher. So now the war is over. During the war, it was a different affair altogether. Now that the war is over, it is not right for him to kill his own teacher's son, who is also um, someone who has this boon and all that. So Arjuna, because he knows that Krishna is at this point testing him by asking him to kill Ashwatthama, and he doesn't do that. Then once they go to the camp, Draupadi sees Ashwatthama, who is like a animal which is bound to a rope, and she herself takes pity on him because she sees that this great son of their teacher, he is now looking like an animal bound to a rope. And even though her own sons were killed by him, she is a very compassionate person, and therefore she is overcome with compassion for this. Even after this heinous act by Ashwatthama, and she says to Arjuna, to her husband, she says, even though he has committed this heinous act, there are multiple reasons why we should spare him. One is that he is the son of your own teacher, and now the war is over, and therefore he needs to be spared. Second is that his mother is still alive, and she only has him because her husband Drona has been killed. And so uh, it will be, I know what it is to lose the sons and cry after that. I don't want another mother to go through the same feeling. So she is full of so much compassion. This is the great sign of the Pandavas and Draupadi, that even in this moment of extreme pain, she is able to see the perspective of his mother, the killer's mother. And she says, because of these reasons, and also because he is, after all, a Brahmana, in the sense that he is committed to the Vedic way of living, and therefore we should spare him. And listening to this, Arjuna is very happy too, because as we said, when Krishna tested him by saying kill him, he knows exactly when Krishna is testing him, and therefore, even though Krishna told him, as if Krishna was also angry, he knew that this was only a test for him, and he did not go with that. And therefore, when Draupadi said this, Arjuna was happy, and Krishna was also expressing approval of what Draupadi said, because that is the right sentiment, a very noble sentiment. And all the Pandavas were in agreement, Yudhishthira, Nakula, Sahadeva, but except Bhima. Bhima is always known for being very um, angry with these kinds of transgressions. So he says, we cannot spare this fellow because he has actually killed sleeping youngsters. And so death is the only boon that has been declared. Death is the only prize we can offer him. That's what even the scriptures say, he says. So now Krishna takes account of all this and he says, yes, both are right. Bhima is right to say that death is the right punishment for one who has killed youngsters who are sleeping. At the same time, Draupadi is also right that he is a fallen Brahmana and also he is the son of your teacher. So he ought to be spared. So Arjuna, now figure out what you need to do. So again, Krishna winks and leaves it to Arjuna. And because both are apparently contradictory instructions. But when this is told to Arjuna, Arjuna immediately understands what Sri Hari means by this, because there is an injunction in the scriptures that for a Brahmana to cut off his locks, his hair locks, is equivalent to capital punishment. So by doing so, he has spared his life, but at the same time, he has given him the equivalent of capital punishment. So, thereby satisfying both, Arjuna cuts off his entire locks of hair, shaves his head off completely, and this is an act of great shame and considered equivalent to capital punishment for a Brahmana, especially. So, thereby he satisfies uh, both injunctions that he needs to be given capital punishment and yet he needs to be spared. So, with that, he is spared and he goes away, Ashwatthama. And the Pandavas, now they are left with doing cremation for their fallen sons. And so they do this and they are engaged in the funeral rites. So, with this, we end this chapter. In the next chapter, we will see the birth of Parikshit and what happens after that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.